Explain this to me. Why are shares up if they've still lost almost 1 million subscribers?
Well, it's kind of a confusing report, Emily, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of a sigh of relief, I think, by a lot of people coming to the numbers. I mean, obviously, the projections going into the third quarter are below expectations in terms of number of new subscribers. They're saying they're going to add 1 million. The street was looking for 1.8 million. They did lose less, right, than expected in the second quarter. I think there were a lot of estimates. Some people are saying as many as 2 million. They came in losing 970,000. The other thing that's kind of confusing too, Emily, is that if you look at their guidance going into revenues and earnings for the third quarter, they are also below consensus, and yet the stock was up. And the only thing I can think of, Emily, is that they're kind of addressing a lot of their issues, right? They talked in their shareholder letter about how they're going to address the issues with all these people, 100 million people, that are using the service for free. And they talked a little bit about free cash flow and various other things. So I think maybe people are just saying they're addressing their issues. It wasn't as worse as we thought, and hopefully things will get better in the future. And that's how we have to leave it, because the stock is up.
Let's talk about this crackdown on password sharing, because let's be honest, Netflix has been giving Netflix away for free for a while to a lot of people who just haven't paid up. If they crack down on the passwords, how big an impact do you think that'll actually have in getting some of those people to pay up?
Well, it's interesting, Emily, because in the shareholder letter, they mentioned they're going to test two approaches in Latin America, and they're going to charge $2.99 a month, and they're going to try to work something to try to get these people to start paying. So I'm kind of curious to learn a little bit more about that. That seems pretty low to me, right? $2.99 a month. I pay close to $20 a month for my Netflix subscription here in the United States. But so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they roll that out and put that together and try to monetize these people and bring them in-house. So I think we need to just learn a little bit more about how they're going to do it. But that's a huge number, 100 million.
So could advertising be the answer to Netflix's problems?
You know, Emily, it's kind of interesting because I'm curious to see how that's going to play out, right? They signed the agreement with Microsoft to help them last week on that. I'm just wondering, and I could ask you, because you're a big user of Netflix, if they got to the point where they're offering an ad, streaming service, and there's not that many ads, maybe it's every 15 minutes, would you be willing to maybe just say, hey, I'm not going to pay the $15, $20 a month and just go straight for the free ad streaming service? So that's interesting. And then the other component is they have 220 million people using their system right now. How many people do they add to this new ad streaming service? And do they start competing against the likes of, let's say, a Facebook or Google in terms of garnering all this revenue through advertising? So I don't know how that's going to come together for them. They're going to let us know more, and they're introducing some new services, I guess, in 2023. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this new ad streaming Netflix, right?
Time is precious and so is money, Dan. I mean, I think I'd have to look at the numbers and also the ad experience. What kind of ads are these? How long am I watching them? Are they pleasing? Are they really tailored to me? The thing is, and this point has been made, the companies that are brought up as competitors, Disney Plus, Hulu, Amazon, HBO, Disney Plus isn't necessarily a substitute for Netflix, is it?
Well, Disney Plus is interesting because they have about 100 million subscribers. They're the largest competitor next to Netflix. They're targeting about 240 million subscribers by 2024, which seems like a really big number for them. But I think you're right, Emily. Disney Plus seems a little bit more different in terms of their content than what we find on Netflix. You were talking earlier about the various, series that they have and how people get hooked on them. It's a little bit of a different component, as Disney has that huge library of movies and content through all the years of Disney production. So it is a little bit different, but there's no doubt that Disney, in terms of number of subscribers, is the closest in terms of Netflix, in terms of their having the 100 million, which is pretty close to 220 million. The rest of the other players have much less subscribers.
So here's the other thing. Is the return on content spending paying off or dropping off? If Stranger Things is costing reportedly $30 million an episode, is that worth it?
Yeah, it's interesting, Emily. You look at their content expense projection for this year. It's about $17.9 billion, which is pretty much in line with what they projected last year, which was around $17 billion. So it seems to me like Netflix is getting a little more cautious in regards to this attitude, we're just going to spend tons of money, create tons of content, and we're going to get the subscribers and we'll be able to pay for it. Seems like they're starting to pull back a little bit in regards to their content budgets and expectations, and starting to be a little bit more careful on margins and so forth. So you bring up a good point where you just keep spending and spending and spending. If you're not getting the subscriber growth because your subscriber growth is negative, does it make sense to keep spending more and more money on content? Do you need to bring it back in a little bit and kind of refocus? And it appears that they're starting to do that instead of this growth at all costs model, which is what they were doing in the past.